Hi, welcome to the Strange Rainbows podcast, episode 10, Samhain. Samhain, Samhain, is the ancient Celtic fire festival of summer's end. It marks the end of harvest and the summer half of the year, and the start of the winter half of the year. It's what mutated into Halloween when Irish and Scottish emigrants brought it to the US, and the traditional American ingredients of capitalism, candy, and colourful costumes were stirred into the mix with a vengeance.
It's Halloween soon, when the ghosts in the moon and black cats in the tree all come looking for me.
It's my favourite holiday for all sorts of reasons, so I have a flaming pumpkin full of dark delights for you today. First, we'll have a quick game of Trick or Truth, and then some info about the Celtic Wheel of the Year. Samhain is Celtic New Year, and we'll be following the 8 festivals in the podcast, starting with Samhain today, and the next will be Yule in December. Today's story is about trick-or-treating from a very different perspective, and after our poem/book report about Summer's End, we'll have the answers to the Trick or Truth quiz. Happy Halloween! Let's start our game of Trick or Truth with the traditional rhyme. Content warning for fairy tale body horror in the rhyme. The good news is that unlike the actual horror humans are causing in the world every day, it's not real. Trick or Truth.
If you tell me a truth, then I'll pull out a tooth. But if you tell a lie, then I'm taking an eye. Get one wrong, there's a leg, or a toe if you beg, 'cause the stakes are so high that you may not survive. Best to be a good host to your trick-or-truth ghost. Wear a costume, stand tall, and I won't scratch at all. I'll just leave a small hole in your heart, mind and soul. Time to play, come on in, Trick or Truth on Samhain.
That delightful rhyme would traditionally be sung before playing Trick or Truth on Samhain night, and now it's time for us to play. See if you can tell which of these dozen questions is a despicable lying trick, and which is a surprising truth. Number 1. Halloween was invented by the Coca-Cola Company in 1913 to sell granola cola, a healthy drink made of pumpkins and oatmeal. The drink didn't take off, but the holiday did. 2. The word Halloween originated in Scotland as Hollow Eve, when hollow ghosts would roam the highlands looking for innocent souls to devour. 3. The Ouija board that some believe is a way to contact spirits and the devil is actually a children's board game owned by Hasbro, the toy company. 4. Trick-or-treating originated as mumming and guising in the British Isles, where people would be rewarded with food for reciting a verse or performing some other show or trick at local houses. 5. Jack-o'-lanterns come from a tricky Irish fella called Stingy Jack, who was barred from heaven for being naughty, and from hell for tricking the devil, and now walks the earth for all time, lighting his way with a turnip lit by a burning coal the devil threw him. 6. If you scoop out the brains of a pumpkin and cut out a scary face, Jack-o'-the-lantern will return 13 years later to do the same to you unless you make an offering every Halloween night. 7. The Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow was originally a ghost with a head riding a headless horse. 8. It is considered unlucky to burn your house down on Halloween night. 9. There are more black cats on Samhain than on any other night of the year. 10. In Austria, Halloween is actually celebrated on the 30th of October due to an old law prohibiting the wearing of costumes on the 31st. 11. In Christ Wickerton in England, the wearing of a witch's or devil's costume is still technically punishable by hanging, although this penalty hasn't actually been applied since the 1950s. 12. Trickle-down treating is where all candies are given to the rich kids who are supposed to share them with the other kids but don't. And 13. The world record for juggling flaming pumpkins is actually 1. Try it with more if you don't believe me. Alright, that's enough fun for now. Let's have some facts. Celtic Wheel of the Year. I'm going to approach this by asking you to imagine an apple, a compass, and a turnip. First, let's imagine a tasty apple. The Earth is like a big spinning apple, and we live on the skin. It spins around its axis once per day and orbits the Sun once per year. Long ago, a big rock hit the Earth and knocked it off-center, and part of the rock bounced off to form the Moon. Now the Earth spins at a tilted angle of 23 degrees off-center. Because of this 23 degrees tilt, parts of the Earth are exposed to sunlight for a shorter or longer time at different times of year. The equator generally gets most sun, the northern hemisphere gets more sun in summer and less in winter, and in the southern hemisphere it's the other way around. This is what causes weather and different seasons. Understanding the seasons and when to plant and harvest crops was a matter of life or death in olden times. The Celtic people held festivals to celebrate the harvest, seek favour with the fair folk, and mark the changing of the seasons. There's a Neolithic tomb at Newgrange in Ireland, built around 5,200 years ago. That's 3200 BC. That's aligned so that the rising sun on the winter solstice floods the chamber inside with light. That brings us to the compass. Let's imagine the year is a circular compass with 365 or so days going around the outside. There are 8 holidays in the Celtic wheel of the year, just like there's 8 main directions on the compass. Let's put Samhain at the top, or north, because it marks the start of the Celtic year. Then we'll go round clockwise and look at each of the 8. So north we have Samhain, Celtic New Year, 1st of November. It's one of the 4 sacred fire festivals and marks the boundary between the dark half and the light half of the year, the end of summer and the start of winter. Samhain means summer's end, and the month of November is called Samhain in Irish. We'll come back to Samhain when we get to the turnip, but let's have a quick spin around the rest of the compass first. Northeast we have Yule in December. This is the winter solstice, when the northern hemisphere gets least sun, so it's the shortest day of the year. In the southern hemisphere it's the opposite. East is Imbolc, the second fire festival, which marks the start of spring on the 1st of February. Southeast we have Ostara in March, the spring equinox when day and night are of equal length, and we're already halfway there. South is Beltane, the third fire festival on the 1st of May, which marks the start of summer. Southwest is Litha, the summer solstice, the longest day in the northern hemisphere, the shortest in the southern hemisphere. West is Lunasa, the 4th fire festival in August that marks the start of autumn and the first harvest. And then northwest we have Mabon in September, the autumn equinox where day and night are equal again. It helps me remember them by looking at the opposites. North and south we have Samhain and Beltane, summer's end and winter's end fire festivals. East and west we have Imbolc and Lunasa, start of spring and autumn fire festivals. Northeast and southwest we have Yule and Litha, the shortest and longest days. Southeast and northwest we have Ostara and Mabon, the 2 equinoxes when day and night are equal. I hope that's enough to give you a quick idea of the Celtic Wheel of the Year. I'll have some more info about it in the special episodes for each of the 8 festivals. And that brings us to the turnip of summer's end, aka Samhain. Samhain. Summer's end was a time of plenty and fear. Imagine living in the old country back then, fully dependent on the land to survive. In the Neolithic and medieval times, when most folks were farmers and the technology to grow and store food all year round just didn't exist, so if you got it wrong, you could be wiped out. It's understandable that knowledge and superstition thrived alongside each other. If you got it right, the time of harvest was a time of plentiful food, enough to last the winter. Yet it was still a time to fear the cold and dark half of the year. On the thin night of Samhain, between summer and winter, the boundaries between this world and the other world were thin, so contact with ancestors, the Eoshi or fairies, and other spirits was easy, whether you wanted it or not. Samhain is a deep topic, and I'm not going to dive into all of it. I'd just like to give you a flavour of the feasting, appeasing, and divination people used to do, and still do actually, and what the holiday means to me. At Samhain, the cattle would be brought down from the hills, and some were slaughtered and eaten at feasts. Their bones were burned on great bone fires, which we know today as bonfires. Every 7th Samhain, the kings and warriors would get together and make laws at the Feast of Tara. Villagers would take a light from the communal fire to symbolically relight the hearth in their home. Offerings were made to appease the spirits of the Aoshi, and people carved turnips into scary faces, putting a light inside them, and dressing in scary costumes made of animal skins and masks, so the fairies wouldn't be tempted to kidnap them. People also played divination games to find out what the next year held in store for them and who was going to get married. These involved all kinds of things, like bobbing for apples, throwing hazelnuts in the fire, walking backwards down the stairs, and looking over your shoulder in mirrors. For me, Samhain is one of several New Years I think about, and it's close to my birthday, so I'm a Samhain spirit already. It's a time of looking back over the last year and reflecting how it went, and thinking about what I'd like to achieve in the next year, and then setting my intentions. This next year is very much about finding balance between my work, health, and creativity. How about you? If Samhain is a new year, what would you reflect on from the past year, and what intentions might you have for the next one? There's all kinds of tools and techniques for divination. My approach involves looking deep inwards to find what feels right. Oh, and given that it's the thin time between the light and dark halves of the year, when spirits and who knows what can cross over oh so very easily, I thought I'd tell you a delightful story of trick-or-treating from a slightly different perspective. Thin, the night. Thin was the night as Dorchacht opened the door from here to there. Its inky black surface glowed as the others stepped through. In a way he was the door, and the door led through the shadows between the worlds, and there was no door. It was best not to think about it too closely. The darkling shifted, passing through the veil himself and manifesting over there, in the other world where the cruel monsters lived. The ancient trees in the other world were kin to those at home and provided abundant shadows for Dorchacht to shift through. He moved swiftly here and there, falling into one and appearing out of another. Dark mist boiled out from his body, spreading out cosily across the ground. Nearby, Scraggletooth was stretching its overly long bramble-branch limbs, a nightmare of twisted wrongness with broken sharp teeth pointing in all directions. It gouged deep scratches in a tree and let out a comforting screech. Good old Scraggletooth. Cobbercob the great black and red spider had climbed into a tree and started spinning a web, the thread stretching elegantly from branch to branch. They were all warming up for the night's dance. Right, let's remember the plan, you two. We go into the village and cause as much mayhem and mischief as we can. Scratch the doors, tumble the walls, and wreak terror into their dark hearts. But no actual killing. We're not monsters. Scraggletooth clacked two limbs together, and Cobbercob blinked her eyes in agreement. The village got larger each thin night, and it was important to keep reminding the monsters to keep their distance. They were known to be disgusting, cruel, and capricious, and were becoming ever more dangerous. Towards the village they moved, Scraggletooth clacking and screeching, Cobbercob swinging between the branches, and Dorchacht shifting between shadows. They were close now. Normally the lights would be off as the villagers hid inside their buildings, but this time there was light ahead. A circle of torches in a clearing, and at its centre a monolith built of murdered trees and as tall as an oak. This was new. Dorchacht approached the edge of the lights, careful not to venture too far into the lightness. On top of the monolith he espied three horrific figures looking out into the night. One pointed at them and let loose a fiendish cry of meh, 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 meh. Chilling. Best they make quick work of this monolith and move on to the village. Dorchacht bade Scraggletooth dance with the monolith. It lurched forwards, each limb a different size and length, giving it a rolling kind of motion. Opening its maw, it took a great bite out of the monolith's side, crunching it with relish and tearing great chunks out of it. It struck with its twisted limbs again and again, and the monolith cracked open and started to lean. A square-shaped monster with vile flesh appendages carrying 2 discs appeared out of the hole and shouted some incomprehensible gibberish at Scraggletooth. It sounded like blah, 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 blah. Scraggletooth took this as a challenge and turned to face it, striking at it with a jagged limb. The creature raised one of the discs, blocking the blow. Scraggletooth struck again, and it blocked it with the other disc. They battled back and forth, and when the creature broke off one of Scraggletooth's spikes with a disc, it shouted, "Blah blah." They seemed evenly matched, so I motioned Cobbercob to join the dance. She shuddered, delightful pustules bursting out of her body, each releasing an egg. These she took in hand and threw at the monolith. Where they struck, they released clouds of dust that ate through the building, leaving holes and weakening it further. A terrifying cry of "Oh, whoa!" came from atop the monolith, and a turnip filled with deadly flames plummeted down onto Cobbercob, lighting her on fire where it struck. One after another, these jack-o'-turnips rained down, turning the clearing into a bright minefield. I emitted thick clouds of ombrous shadow mist to smother them in soothing darkness. "Meh, meh, 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 meh," came a shout from the top of the monolith, and the turnips flew down in my direction. I had to dodge them, for they would surely be fatal to me. I was rather sensitive to this kind of fiery light. But as I was dodging, clever Cobbercob seized the moment and scrabbled up the sheer side of the monolith, spewing a gout of web inside and pulling out a thin monster she had wrapped up in webbing, placing it in her carry sack. She quickly attached more webs to the side of the monolith, swung down and yanked on them, and the damaged monolith finally broke, crashing down to the ground. A despairing cry of "Meh meh" came from the top of the monolith, and I realized that one of them was still up there. I shifted into a shadow, moving through and manifesting out of another in a small chamber at the top of the monolith as it was plummeting. I beckoned to the small monster there to jump in, and screeching "Meh meh," at the last moment it did, passing through me to land safely on the ground below. I crashed down with the monolith and was sent sprawling. Dazed, I looked around the clearing. The destroyed monolith was burning, smashed turnips lay all around. Scraggletooth was picking up a broken-off bramble branch limb, and Cobbercob had been struck by falling debris. The monsters had not fared much better. Both the discs carried by the square one had great scratches and tears in them, and it was sitting, holding its head and moaning, "Blah." The webbed one had fallen to one side and writhed, trying to free itself. And near me the small one lay on the ground, babbling "Meh meh 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 meh" in a hideous language no one could understand. I asked it, "Are you all right? We weren't trying to kill you." It was all rather a mess. I faced off against the small monster. Were we to dance now? Was this cruel beast going to strike me down and murder my friends? It stumbled to its feet and held out both fleshly limbs threateningly, palms towards me ready to strike, and said, "Meh meh 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 meh." I shifted to a leftward shadow, and it turned towards me, not attacking. I shifted behind it, and it spun round to face me, again threatening with its vile limbs, but not attacking. Perhaps it was amenable to a truce. Perhaps we had danced enough for one night. "Let us end our dance for tonight," I said. I formed myself into the shape of a turnip, glowing with black fire, and then back to my normal amorphous shape. The monster backed away a pace, and I did the same. It jiggled its nightmarish head and turned to tend to its wounded. I did the same, helping Scraggletooth collect up its broken limbs and putting out the fires still smouldering on Cobbercob's flank. "Meh meh 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 meh," said the small monster as I opened a door to take the others back through to safety. I saluted it as I shifted out of that hellish world and replied in kind, "I see you next Samhain." I'm tempted to write that one from the human's perspective as well. Now let's have a poem and school study assignment. Summer's End.
In the mist of summer's end, darkness shambles through. Scritch and scratch and claw and rend, they have come for you. You did tread the fairest land, didn't do the dance, not an offering in hand, not a blood or chance. Scrag the tooth and broken jaw, crunch your bone and chew. Don't get stuck inside its maw, they have come for you. Spinny claw and web the cob, whirling, jumping fast. Twist your neck and poison lob, you have breathed your last. Gloom of shadow in the dark creeps across the land. Oily darkness leaves its mark on your mind and hand. Not a way to save your soul, late it's dark and cold, 'cause the fairest peace you stole, you will not grow old. In the mist of summer's end, darkness shambles through. Scritch and scratch and claw and rend, they have come for you. Report of poem Summer's End by Belcher Boswell, Mr. Kavanagh's class, 3rd class. This poem was learned me by me Gram when I was a little kid. We used to sing it and do the dance to learn ourselves of the dangers of upsetting the fair folks. Those what didn't listen done suffered for it, and there it is, like me cousin Scamp what broke his leg tripping over out of a tree that time. For normally he's the best climber, and that's why we call him Scamp, and also 'cause it's his name. Summer's End is of course about the Easter what some calls Hallows Eve nowadays. The night at ends of summer when the mist is thin and the fair folks can cross over into our world. They does this if someone has upset 'em, or for a bit of crack if they's in the mood. If you done upset the fair folk, you're gonna get your face scratched and worse, so you better watch yourself. This poem is based on scientific facts, and it fair warns about 3 of the fair folks what might come visiting. They might have come through one time, and that is why we knows about them. So better watch out, Mr. Kavanagh, or you're going to be scritched and scratched like all the dubs what don't respect the fair folks. So, and them's the facts. Teacher's note. Mr. Boswell, please be aware that the assignment was to analyse William Butler Yeats's Easter 1916, not a common nursery rhyme. Your wild speculations on theme and context show a creativity sadly unmatched by commensurate enthusiasm for the usage of proper grammar. D-. Kindly note the correct spelling of Kavanagh in future, or I will be seeing you in detention. Again. Where's the truth in Trick or Truth, and did you lose a leg or tooth? Let's find out. What is truth, really? The answers to most of these depend on your personal perspective and chosen delusions. Only a couple were definitely true, but they all have some truth to them. Let's go through real quick. The first one was a trick. It was Christmas that Coca-Cola made up, not Halloween. I made up the Scottish Hollow Ghosts evening. It's true that the Ouija board is a children's game and Hasbro owns the trademark. It's also true about mumming and guising being the origins of Trick or Treat. Also Mischief Night, which was a night of general vandalism and crime in North America. Kind of like a fun purge. The Jack-o'-lantern folktale is exactly how I described it, so you can decide if it's true or not. It's probably not true about Jack coming to scoop out your brains. Risk it if you dare. It's also not true about the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow, but there have been folktales of headless horses. It's unlucky to burn your house down on any night, not just on Halloween. Are there more black cats? Are they shadows or ghosts here for just the night? I really want this to be true, even though I made it up. I also made up the fact about Austria celebrating it on the 30th, although there are still lots of weird old laws in the statute books across the world. It's definitely true about the hangings in Christ Wickerton, except that I made the place up. Not true about trickle-down treating, but I'm sure any economists are chuckling at that one.
And I made up the flaming pumpkins thing. Please don't try juggling them. I hope you enjoyed my attempt to offer some whimsical shadows we can hide behind to escape, at least for a little while, from the very real human evils of this world. I put some more Trick or Truth, some funny old Halloween games, and a dash of poetry on Patreon, and I do an episode there every Saturday. I hope to see you again next week, and remember, it's not ghosts who are the real monsters, it's humans. Happy Halloween. Thanks for listening. The Strange Rainbows podcast is copyright Mike Storm 2024, all rights reserved. It is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual names, characters, businesses, places, events, or persons, living, dead, or imaginary, is entirely coincidental.